Hello and welcome to today's episode of Build Value by Choice podcast show. My name is Nana Bonsu. I'm your host. Today's guest is none other than Ray Croft. Let me tell you a couple of things about Ray. Ray is the president of the Exit Planning Institute Dallas chapter. He's also involved in various organizations such as United Way, Rotary International. He's an adjunct professor at the University of North Texas. He's a certified value builder. He's a president and CEO of Mobius Financial Advisors in the United States. And he happens to reside in Dallas, Texas. Welcome aboard, Ray.
Thank you.
All right. So today's topic is going to be revolving around employee retention strategies. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk about this topic than Ray, since Ray he's talked about it quite a bit and he's even developed a product to solve that issue. So I was really interested in talking to him and bringing his message to our audience. Ray, before I get into asking you a couple of questions, I actually wanted to share a few metrics that I gathered for our audience. Right now, based on the 2020 National Federation of Independent Business Problems and Priorities Survey, among the top 10 severe problems for small business owners, the numbers 2 and 3 were related to employees. The number 2 item was locating qualified employees, and the number 3 was finding and keeping skilled employees. So you can see this is a top of mind item for employers. According to the 2017 Gallup State of the American Workplace Report, 33% of US employees are engaged in their work, which is far lower than what is recorded for the world's best organizations, which have 70% of their employees engaged in their work. There's also another statistics from the website fitsmallbusiness.com, and they did a comparison between 2019 and 2020. And what they found was that in 2019, 24% of businesses expected to hire in the next year, that is in 2020. Whereas last year, approximately 16% expected to hire next year, which is this year. So clearly there was an 8% drop. According to the 2021 National Federation of Independent Businesses Small Business Economic Trends report, finding qualified employees remains a problem. 61% of owners reported few or no qualified applicants for the positions they were trying to fill. And where there were open positions, the labor quality remained a significant problem. 31% of owners reported few qualified applicants for their open positions, and 29% reported none, which is a 48 record high. So clearly, there's not a whole lot of talent out there. And so if you have them, you want to keep them. So then I want to dive into how we keep our talent, which is one of the greatest assets any business can have. Ray, can you tell us a little bit about what the whole idea of employee retention is, and just kind of take it from there?
Yeah, this is not a recent problem as far as finding quality employees. Even before the pandemic, we had businesses, we had an economy that was expanding. More jobs, the economy was just increasing. And so business owners were having trouble finding qualified employees. I think they've always recognized that their key employees were key to their business. They always recognize that. But now it has gone even deeper than that, even going all the way down to frontline employees. I'm telling you, they can't even find employees to work at the McDonald's serving, things like that. So it's gotten that bad. So what happens then? They have to increase the wages for those front lines, which increases for this system manager and the managers all the way up. So as the demand for employees, the supply is low, your costs increased as well. So you've got an increase in cost, plus you can't expand. I've got business owners all the time that are saying, I've got a lot of business out there that I could do, a lot of work. I just can't because I don't have the employees to. So now it's just not a matter of keeping my key management. It's down to how do I keep the front line all the way down? So it's a bigger problem now than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right. How then, and I'll circle back to, to dive a little bit deeper into that. But there's also this thing about balancing. To every problem, there is a great opportunity, right? And so maybe employers can start thinking about maybe rethink their businesses to be less dependent on employees, right? In terms of whether it's AI, new technologies, or whether it's systematizing the documenting, just so that they can either bring in freelancers or part-timers or contractors or even outsourcing the work. Because they on the one hand, employees are the greatest asset in the business. On the other hand, we don't want to be too dependent on the key employees, because that also depresses the value of the business.
Right. And so there's certain positions that you can systematize. You can put up a kiosk, for example, right, to place your orders and things like that. Certain things you cannot. I mean, they're doing robo-advisors for investments. So a lot of AI things going on or whatever to meet these problems. That's one great thing about this country is we always find a way to address our problems, because if there's a need, there's going to be some sort of profit motive in there. And so, and that's happening, but there's many things that you just cannot outsource. And you mentioned something about outsourcing certain things. Well, even those people we traditionally outsource, they're having problems as well, right? Finding people. So we can't even go to our traditionals. We need help, to an employment or an outsource, a fractional CFO or whatever. It's just very difficult. So where we start is who we have and create an environment to keep them. All right. And sometimes it's got to be a little bit of fluid. Some people, it's not just money. Sometimes it's freedom of hours, because I've got kids at home. It might be telecommuting, those type of things and stuff. So we've got to come up with a retention package that will address individual needs. It's not always pay. Sometimes it is pay, but it's not always pay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, there are different things like, bring your pet to work or something, right? And so the one of the things that, and I guess, we can talk a little bit more about, some of the strategies that are available for retaining employees. But one of the things I read, there's a book, Give and Get Employer Branding, and it talks about featuring these employees just so they feel like they have a stake in the business. And we always talk about getting the employees to have the ownership mindset, just so you can free up the owner to not have to be the hub in the middle of all activities in the business. Are there certain ideas, as we delve into some of these strategies, like maybe telling their stories, video stories, and putting it on their website where they feel like, hey, my personal life is actually of great importance to the business. There's a work-life balance. I don't have to take the work home, that whole kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about that. I mean, we've got our needs. We've got to feed ourselves and things like that. We need to feel protected, but we also need to feel connected as well and feel appreciated. So if you can find a way to create that environment within your organization, you mentioned about that work-life balance, and to have your mission and the vibe of your company to be family focused. Whatever that is, whatever that vibe is, that's going to attract like-minded people, right? So it's family focused. Those people are going to stay, and it's going to attract others, right? And the ones that it's not important, they're not going to be attracted. But it's important to attract the people. You've heard about get the right people on the bus, right?
Right. Good to great.
Those are the right people. If that's your vibe, then those are the people who are going to be attracted to you. You want to create something that attracts those people you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
You don't want to show one face, and then when they get in, it's a whole nother face, and it just doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why, I mean, one of the concepts I know this is almost like common sense, but at least it's well articulated in the Give and Get employer branding book. The authors, I think Adams and some other author, and they talk about, the whole branding thing is talk about the perks, right? The benefits, right? The salary, the 401ks, that whole nine yards, and also the challenges and the difficulties, right, in the business. So they get to see the whole thing. So you want to make sure that you attract the right kind of people who know what you're signing out for as far as the difficulties or the challenges or some of the projects are concerned. Now, I wanted to kind of ask you about some of the employee retention strategies, and maybe you can help us dive a little bit deeper into that. There are a couple of things that I'm aware of. One is you can either give them stay bonus or some kind of long-term incentive plan. You can give them stock options if you have them. You can give them maybe more vacation days or paternity leave or tuition reimbursement or work from home. What are some of the most popular employee retention strategies, and which ones do you now recommend as far as not giving away equity in the business or reducing the value of the business long term?
I don't think I would. There's none that I would not recommend, because it really depends on your organization, and do some sort of evaluation on your people and their needs. But for example, take a 401k. That's not really a retention thing anymore. It's almost expected, right?
Right.
Your competitors got it. You've got it. It's not a retention. I can easily move my 401k. That's just kind of expected. It's one of those things,
Right.
I expect when when I'm go to a restaurant, I expect them to bring me water. It's not a bonus. So those are things, there's certain things that you just have because they're expected. And then there's other things that you can install that make you stand out, again, to attract them. Certain things may not attract certain people, certain things would. For example, a on-site daycare would not attract me. I don't have any kids at home, but it would be very attractive to some of these. If you want a young workforce, right? If that's your deal,
Right.
We're a tech company, we want a young workforce, on-site daycare, flexible hours, great strategies. You mentioned stock. That can work depending on how it is designed. But for example, in privately held businesses, there's no market for the stock. I can't just go and sell my stock, whatever. So the only way I'm going to be able to get that money is to go right back to the employer and say, here, I'm going to go here, buy it. So it kind of puts the burden on you to buy it. Now, it also may give them incentive to actually leave because another employer made them a better offer, or they got in some financial troubles, whatever. And they say, well, I've got this stock here, buy it from me. I'm leaving. So it's not a retention thing, right? In that case. Right. Plus, they could, there's non-voting stock and there's voting stock. There's lots of ways you can do that, but it can get kind of complicated. So unless you're looking at restricted type stock and you're a larger company, most of the time it doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So, again, vacation days, things like that, again, that's expected. Sick days are expected, but flex time, hours, I want to be home at 3:30 when my kids get home. I'm willing to come in on Saturdays. I'm willing to come in at 5 a.m. or whatever. That's not expected, but you know what I'm saying? You can tailor some of these things.
Yeah, that's why you can get creative, and as far as flex time and
right.
when that's concerned. Yeah, definitely. One of the things that, so depending on the size of the company, because people have ambitions, right? They want to be able to be moving up, or they want to be able to advance in your career. And we know that employees are responsible for their own careers. Their managers can be coaches or mentors or facilitators, but at the end of the day, the employee is responsible for their own careers. So what opportunities, because in some cases, sometimes employees may feel like they're stuck, either because they don't have the opportunity to advance, because wherever they need to advance, somebody's already occupying that space, or the company just need them doing what they do, or they're so good at what they do that people just can't envision them doing anything else. How do you advise or recommend owners, with business in that situation?
Right. So that's one of the first things we do is we get an organizational chart first, the first one that they have right in it. And then what we do is we do a workshop and develop their mission statement, their vision, and their goals for the next 5 years. And then we roll those up to 3 years and 2 years and things like that. So here are your organizational goals. Then you look at your organizational chart and say, do these positions support that? If it doesn't, we may need to do some changes. So let's say we make some changes in that organizational chart. Now, the thing is, you should always have a succession plan, not just from, number one to number two, it's all the way down. If I'm going to have a succession, I'm the CEO, and I'm going to have a succession plan for someone to replace me, there needs to be simultaneously a succession plan for that person and that person and that person. And that succession plan is, number one, evaluating that person if they can even fill that role. I've seen many times they take a fantastic salesperson, he's great, and to reward him, they put him in a higher position. He's not qualified, he doesn't like it, and to top that off, you've taken out a fantastic salesperson. So before you just say, hey, Joe, we're going to put you up here, both positions need to be evaluated and the person needs to be evaluated. So you need to do that, right? And then sometimes it's just the communication to say, this is where we need you, right? You are so good at that. And to create some sort of incentive package to keep them in that position, right? They are the operations of that plant floor, and they are just amazing at it, right?
Right.
Can I make them happy there? I would love to make them happy there and just make it so appealing that they're happy there, right?
Right. Now, what about this Crosstrain? Maybe just having people rotate, right? Spend 6 months, in one area of the business and another area of the business. Have you found that to be, to work, or does that destabilizes the business, especially if it's a relatively smaller one?
Yeah, we'll do it over a period of time. I'll have that executive list out their critical functions and kind of rate them, which ones are the most critical, okay? And then we come up with a plan on how we're going to train this next person or persons, whatever. And it's not just there's an art and science to each position. The science is easy. You take this here and you put it here, right? The art is how you do that. And with my experience, I've done lots of things wrong, failings, this, that, and the other. What's the thinking when I make this decision? Someone new may not know that, but I've been doing it for 20 years, right? And so I can tell you, the reason I do it this way is because this way and this way have failed or whatever. So many times this is a long period of time when you're doing a succession plan, right? Because they need to experience the art and the science of it.
Right. And how long does it typically take to do a succession plan?
To develop one, not very long. I mean, we could do one, depending on the complexity of the organization. If it's a, 50 employee one, we can do that in a month or whatever. I mean, to develop it, not to implement it. The developing it is not hard. Implementation is the key in anything. We can create great plans. the success lies in implementation, and that may take, depending on the company and the complexity, it may take, could be 1 year, could be 2 years, could be longer.
Right. Okay. Now, this whole balancing act of keeping your employees without being too dependent on them. What do you see? How do business owners handle this whole dichotomy between they want to document all their business processes without spooking, employees into thinking, oh, that means I am replaceable?
Well, yeah, but it's got to be a culture. It's got to be throughout the whole organization. This is how we do business. The true value of McDonald's is not because they make the best hamburger, because they don't, right? Their value is in their processes. They can take a 16-year-old and he could be managing the store in a month, right? It's the processes. So from how much ketchup that goes on to what happens when and how many seconds and things like that. So if the culture is that nobody's irreplaceable and we work as a team for the benefit of the organization, everybody pitches in, right? And it's not like you're just picking on me. So that gradual shift of the cultures can be painful sometimes, right? It's, you don't go from a Google mentality that, everybody's in flip-flops and stuff like that and does their own thing to something more structured overnight.
Right.
So it's got to be a culture, values-based type shift.
Yeah, and one of the things, obviously, definitely, and that's why you're going to need some kind of a change agent. And if the owner is not, the right person for that, they can bring in somebody who has the right personality for that. Because one of the things a lot of times that, unfortunately, if you're a smaller business, your management bench may not be big enough for you to delegate some of these things, and you may not have the personality for it. Like the owner may be the creative type, right? They may not be the touchy-feely kind of person like Elon Musk, who's a creative person, can create all day, but you probably don't want them doing some kind of a people kind of touchy-feely kind of thing.
Right.
So how do you recommend that? I mean, I don't know if, depending on the size, whether it's 50 people or 10 people, and do they bring in an outside consultant, or do they need to just find somebody in their management ranks, or maybe an HR person to help lead that kind of cultural transformation?
Yeah, sometimes it is someone from the outside. One thing that a lot of business owners think is, they build a successful business and they feel like those skills transfer. I can do anything, right? And so they feel like they're going to take that on themselves. There's two issues there. First of all, they're not an expert in that part, whatever. And there's people out there that can do it much more efficient and better than they can. Plus, if I'm the CEO and I'm taking my eye off the ball about building this business, and I start doing this, 20% of my time, it's hurting my business. Right. So one thing we don't want to do is we want the CEO to continue eyes forward, focused on building this business, whatever that role is. And you're right that they may be a salesperson, and many of them are. They're not the implementation. And so when you're talking about a management team, you've got to have both, right? You got to have the visionary, and you've got to have someone doing the implementation as well. But, back to as far as what you do, as far as how to tie them to the business. So that's one key, is you want to tie these employees to the business now, because they are the key to your success for your business. But you also want to tie them into the business after a potential sale, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, if I'm going to buy your company, I'm very concerned about your key people fleeing and taking key customers or intellectual property with them. That's a huge concern for me. So I want to make sure you've got them tied to your business. So we create what's called a golden handcuff. You've heard that, and a golden parachute. Right. The golden handcuff keeps them through the sale, and it also rewards them after the sale, right? And so we spend a lot of time developing strategies for that. So it serves two purposes.
Great. Now, as far as and then one last question, and we'll kind of give it a wrap. So, in terms of cost, right? So, if I'm an owner, I'm trying to justify the overhead costs. As we talked earlier on in the show, we talked about how if you want to keep your employees, chances are you may have to bump up their salaries or what have you, and that means increased overhead costs. How do I justify it to myself that it's worth it versus letting them go or lose them to the competition or to big business or what have you, and say, hey, I'm just going to go out there and either not fill the position and trying to do as much as I can on my own, or just say, okay, well, I'm just trying to figure out what is the cost, but what is the good rule of thumb that an owner can quickly use to make a good rational decision?
Right. And it can be different for whichever level of key employee you're looking at. Your high level key employees about be more. But here's a common thing is I'm just going to give them a 10% raise, or I'm going to give them a bonus at the end of the year. The problem with that is that if they give me a 10% raise, they get used to it. It's not an incentive anymore. So you give me a 10% raise, I make 100,000, I make 110, but after taxes, my bonus is really only worth $7,000 a year. So $525 a month. Is that really going to incentivize? No, I'm going to increase my standard of living by $525 a month. So there's a combination. You've got to put some to reward you now, to improve my standard of living now, but another bucket into a what's called a deferred comp thing that says, hey, Jack, this is going to turn into a nice pension down here, but you can't get it for 10 years. You can't touch it. If you leave, 9 years and 364 days, you don't get it. So all of a sudden, here comes a competitor, says, hey, we're going to bump you up by 10 or 15%. Your key employee looks at that and says, look at all I'm leaving on the table. No, thank you. So a combination of both. So strategy we use, we say, hey, look, if you want to give them 10% raise now, fine, but take 10% also and put it in this deferred. It's not a deferred comp plan. It's a strategy to create a stream of income later on that's restricted, right? That the business owner owns it. And if you leave early, I can put whatever restrictions I want. I can say, hey, the Dallas Cowboys have to win the Super Bowl before you get this, right? Well, I guess you're never going to get it. So,
by the way, I live in the Washington area, so mention the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay, all right. I mean, I don't know when this is going to be aired, but the Cowboys just had a big win last night.
Congratulations.
So anyhow, but the thing about it is the business owner wants full control, right?
Right.
So this strategy gives them all the control, but the benefit is big for the employee, but it's deferred, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And they can even, it's the whole vesting kind of thing, right? Every 3 months, like you get 1% of it released. So, you can kind of see that, hey, I get a little bit of like the $500 every month or what have you. It's just that, it's not like, it's frozen till for another 10 years, because then somebody may be like, okay, I'm not going to see it for another 10 years anyway. So in any case, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insight with us. Are there any 2 or 3 things? I forgot to ask you, I know you have a product out there that helps business owners handle their employee retention strategies. Could you describe or share with us a little bit more about that product?
Well, it's an internal thing. We call it a Ceres program or whatever, but it's just that.
Okay.
It's a strategy that we use. We say, okay, based on your budget, you can put it into this deferred type thing. It's not a deferred comp plan, so I don't want people to confuse them with that. But we can arrange it any which way you want. We can say they can't touch for 10 years or 5 years or 20 years or whatever, and it produces a stream of income. But it's in full control of the business owner, right? And so they can put whatever restrictions they want on it. And then at some point in time, it's released to the employee. At that time, not only does the employee get access to the money, the business owner gets a big old tax deduction. right? Because now it's going on the books as like a salary or a bonus.
Right. So that's
So,
a win-win.
Absolutely.
So thanks. So what are 2 or 3 things that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think don't fall into that trap that, my employees are happy. They like being here, in the end they might, but in the end, they've got to think about their family and their future. Right. And so when somebody comes looking, knocking on the door, they're probably going to listen. Right. So be proactive about it. Look at what your employees as a whole, look at your culture, things like that. And let's together talk this through. What does this person need? What do they want? How would it affect my business if they left? That should tell you how much you should contribute to that, whatever. So I'd say don't put it off, right? Somebody may be courting your key employee as we speak right now. And I can't tell you how many times one of my clients said, hey, Jack left. Really? I had no idea. And we've been talking about doing something for him. We never got around to it. Right? So it's like teaching your kids. You want to teach them all these things and you just put it off. And all of a sudden they go off to college and you realize, oh, it's too late to teach them how to change a tire. Right?
Yeah.
So, right. So I'd say it's recognize the importance of it and doing something now.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Ray. Appreciate your time and talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.